It is.
Yes. I have a question about, or I'd like to hear Abraham's perspective on what seem to be random events within the notion of we create our own reality and the escrow and all of that.
What's a random event?
Oh,
what's
all right.
meant by it?
Well, I have a good victim story, and so I'd like...
just tell us what's meant by a random event.
In this way. I'm driving home on a perfectly beautiful afternoon, feeling great about the world. A guy cuts me off. I nearly hit him. I honk at him. He pulls up and then slams on his brakes. And I honk again, and we exchange some guy stuff.
But we want you to give us an example of but we would like to hear about a random event.
That seemed very random. I'm headed home.
That's your point of attraction.
Exactly.
Nothing random about that.
Okay,
what is the definition of random?
I'm minding my own business. A guy runs a stop sign right in front of me.
Oh, well, then random doesn't exist. Because that can happen. Nothing ever happens that is out part of your vibrational point of attraction, ever. And the reason that we're harassing you here deliberately and enjoying it, in fact,
yes,
is because random implies that something could happen to you that has nothing to do with you. And law of attraction defies that. Nothing can ever happen to you that has nothing to do with you.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to understand is, how would I attract? Is it
here's
escrow someplace?
Here's what's happening.
Yeah.
You've got vibrations going that you don't know you've got going. So when it happens, it came out of the blue. It came out of nowhere. And what happened is, you know those man things that you said that you exchanged with each other?
Yeah.
In other words, incidences happen and you have responses to them which become part of your vibration, and depending upon how active they are within you, you have more and more of those experiences. In other words, what we would do, if something like that happened to us, we would say, well, this is a wonderful thing because my vibration was not such that we collided. And my vibration was such that when Esther's driving down, Esther and Jerry have been accident-free for years and years and years and years and years, and have not even seen an accident in years and years and years and years and years. But when they do hear a siren or an ambulance or something, Esther always asks herself, what's going on in my vibration that would bring it that close? In other words, because anything that happens, there's something within you that makes you rendezvous with it in that way. Jerry and Esther were at a restaurant the other night. Now, it's interesting because Esther had been pondering how years ago, Jerry, it seemed that because he was on the highways all the time, he was always saving people. If he found a boulder in the road, he'd get his flares out and put it there and attract the police. If there was, he came across some people that were standing on a riverbank one day, and he said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Those boys are drowning." And Jerry said, "Well, who's doing something? What are you doing about it?" And they said, "Well, we've sent for the police, but we don't think that they're going to get here in time." And so Jerry took a fence apart and got some people to string it and hooked it onto himself so that he would be secure, and went upstream and dived in the water and brought the boys in. In other words, he has story after story after story of these close calls where he saved someone from peril. And now those things just don't come anywhere near them. And Esther says, good. In other words, she's not eager for him to go jumping in the river. But they were having this conversation, and Esther had sort of been pondering it, and they'd been in Estes Park, and for 20 days they did not hear an ambulance. They did not hear a siren. And then one day, all day long, they heard ambulances and sirens, and Esther is thinking, who's in town? What's going on? Somebody with a different energy must be here attracting all of this. And then she activated that a little bit, and that night they went to dinner at the same place that they'd been having dinner, and some people were walking out of the restaurant as Jerry and Esther were walking in, and they stopped to sort of cordially say hello, and the woman turned her back, and there was a little ledge about this high, and her foot tripped on the ledge, and she started to fall into the bushes, and Jerry just reached out and kept her from falling. She was so grateful. She would have had quite a tumble. And Esther thought, I activated that. We talked about it. We've activated that. In other words, and so what we're getting at is maybe it's nice that the universe knew that woman was going to fall in the bushes. And maybe it's nice that the universe lined Jerry up, who can keep people from falling in the bushes. Esther says to Jerry, that's why I hang around with you. You never let me fall in the bushes. In other words, but what we're getting at is that everything that happens is active within someone's vibration. In other words, maybe that woman would not have even started to fall in the bushes if there was not someone who wanted to keep her from falling in the bushes. In other words, what we're talking about is the lining up of events, not the causation of events. What we're talking about is, we were visiting with a woman one day who had a similar question. She said, I'm driving down the freeway. Your words exactly. I'm living happily ever after. I'm listening not only to happy music, she was listening to an Abraham tape. In other words, she was really going to try to put the guilt on us. I'm listening and I'm just tootling along and I'm feeling wonderful, and a policeman pulled me over and gave me a ticket. And we said, well, what her point was is my vibration was different than what happened to me. I know it was. I was happy, and that happened, and that didn't make me happy. So Abraham law of attraction is not right. And we said, well, how do you feel about wearing your seatbelt? Well, she abhors wearing her seatbelt. There are all kinds of freedoms that she feels are being taken away. In fact, she meets with people that talk about these things. But I was happy in that moment. We said, well, you were just the best fish for that fisherman to catch in that moment. In other words, he's out there trolling for someone who's doing something wrong, and you're driving down the freeway listening to happy music, yes, but with a vibration bubbling in the background of how you do not approve of that. And you lighted up just like a rocket for him. He saw you long before he could actually see with his eyes that you were not wearing a seatbelt. Law of attraction put you side by side with him. You see, not randomly, vibrationally, law of attractionally.
Can we take it just a step farther? So, the guy, after I think it's all over, he pulls over to the side. I pass him and go on about my business, I think. Going, oh, okay, I recovered pretty soon. It's all over.
Yes, sure.
He followed me for 1.5 miles and rammed my car.
Yes.
Yeah. Then immediately fell apart.
But what happened before that? What happened before he rammed your car? What was that guy stuff you were talking about?
Well, that was just that guy incident where I honk. He pulls up a little bit, slaps on the brakes. I honk again. He flips me off. I flip him off. He pulls over. I think it's done. I think it's all over. Oh, it happens millions of times. No, guys understand this.
Yes, but what we're saying is every time it happens, you contribute to that thought form that we were talking about. And law of attraction coalesces the enraged driver stream or thought form. And then when you get close to it, sometimes you just get swept by the current. Have you ever been in a stream on an inner tube or in a boat where you're not moving at all, and then all of a sudden you just get close enough to the current and off you go?
Oh, precisely. That's just what I'm talking about.
But that's not random. That's vibrating here and 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 vibrating here, and being used to vibrating here, so I don't even know I'm vibrating here. It's what all guys do. It happens 1,000,000 times every day. It's just what we do. And then vibrating here, and I'm vibrating here, which is really close to vibrating here, and I don't even really realize that I'm vibrating here because it was so close to vibrating here that I hardly noticed the difference. And now I'm vibrating here, and it's what everybody does, and I don't even notice that I'm vibrating here, and before I know it, I have hooked into the stream, and law of attraction hooks me up with somebody else that's vibrating in exactly the same place. In other words, it's like Jerry has said to Esther over the years, as they have seen someone not watching what they're doing, and he will say, it only takes 2 people not watching what they're doing to have a sort of bad experience. And we would tell the story a little differently, but we would say, so here you are, you're vibrating and not knowing how you're vibrating and not knowing how you're vibrating. When you have a manifestation, you got to know that's how you're vibrating. But we call that post-manifestational awareness. In other words, nobody ever gets anything something that is not a vibrational match to what they're vibrating. And so once you have an experience like that, now you've got some choices. Now you can say, there's something vibrating within me that I didn't even realize. Maybe I was more bothered by that than I think. Maybe I better want to clean up this vibration. Jerry and Esther were sitting at an intersection, big intersection in San Jose one day years ago. Jerry was driving, it was a rental car. And they stopped at this intersection, and the light was red and red and red and red and red and red for a very inordinate amount of time. And Jerry said to Esther, I don't see any reason that I shouldn't just go ahead and turn left. Do you? And Esther said, no, I don't see any reason that you shouldn't just go ahead and turn left. So he turned left right in front of a train that was barreling from behind them. That's the reason the light was not changing, is because there was a train approaching. And it was not that close. The train missed them by a foot. And we are certain that the engineer of the train was doing that guy thing. In other words, he could not be lit. And Esther said, I can see the headlines now. Deliberate creators killed by a train. But the point that we want to make is they weren't killed by a train. In other words, nothing ever happens to you that you're not a vibrational match to. In other words, Jerry was questioning authority. He's questioning the authority of the seatbelt. He's questioning the authority of the red light. He's questioning that they know better than he knows. In other words, he was sort of in that vibration that I don't want people to tell me what to do. And sometimes there's a reason for the light to be red, you see. And so sometimes there is a sort of wake-up call that makes you realize that you could soften your vibration a little bit. And you know what we think is at the heart of all of this? We have another story to tell you that's on the same subject. It will sound a little different, but it's really the same subject, where Jerry and Esther are getting ready to leave a campground, and they have two different personal philosophies about the best way to hook the car up, the process. And they both work, but they both think that their way is the best way. And so nearly every time they hook up, they have this sort of little playful tug of war where Esther will say, well, you sure you don't want to do it my way? Well, Jerry will say he is sure that he wants to do it his way. And Esther always yields under almost all conditions. Nothing matters enough to Esther to make any real wave over it. And so Esther always yields. But as Esther is walking up to get into the motor coach, while Jerry's going to stay behind to check to see if everything is hooked up right, Esther is thinking to herself, I hope it doesn't work out. In other words, wouldn't it be nice if now we're hooked up on this spot, if we really can't make this turn the way he thinks we can? And wouldn't it be nice if he was wrong and I was right? And we say, so many of you care about being right more than you care about feeling good, because you feel in competition for the resources. When Esther felt that thought formulate in her mind, she laughed all the way to the driver's seat. She could hardly believe it. I'm actually wishing for our life to not go as well as it could, so that I can be a little righter than the man I love. Where's the logic in that? And we say, somehow you have all pitted yourself in a competitive way. Somehow you've become convinced that there's this finite amount of resources that you are quibbling over. And that's what that guy thing is about. In other words, he thinks he's right, you think you're right. As if there's not enough rightness to go along. And what we say is, the law of attraction always lines those of you up who are perfect matches for each other. In other words, he may gesture more powerfully and he may spew more venom, but your vibrations match when you rendezvous. It doesn't mean that the basic nature of who you are and the basic nature of who he is in terms of everything about your life is the same, but in that moment, you have vibrationally matched, you see. Jerry and Esther didn't match a collision with the train. They matched a near miss, and they matched an upset engineer, and they matched their energy moving a little faster, and they matched making some decisions about paying attention, and they matched feeling more respect for the law and for the lights. In other words, there were a lot of things that occur in situations like that are very helpful information. When something happens, you launch a rocket of desire about what you prefer to have happen, you see. We've noticed, and we know you have too, haven't you noticed that something will happen and then it will happen again and again and again and again and again? In other words, you observe it, you activate it, You have an experience, you offer a vibration about it, law of attraction matches it, you observe it. You offer a vibration about it, law of attraction matches it, you have a manifestation which you observe. In other words, you have to find some way of offering a vibration that's different from what you're observing if you want your what is to begin to change.